And it is recording. Cool.
Okay,
So
cool.
here, Connor Rogers, lead draft analyst for Bleacher Report, host of BR Betting, and host of the That's So Mets podcast. So how you doing?
Good, man. Good to catch up with you. It's been a minute, and I know we're going
Yeah.
to talk some New York football today. So,
Yeah.
I feel like these last couple of years, it's just constantly like Jets, Giants. How do we fix that? How do we fix that? But this one for the Giants feels a little different because we know they're going to make some hires. So I'm excited to get into it, man.
Yeah, and it was a pre-pandemic. Went to Miami for the 49ers Chiefs and ran into you, Lefko, Brian Westbrook. It was a fun time. So
Right
yeah,
before that was one of my
literally
last
right
trips.
before.
I'm trying to think. There was that, and then there was the combine I was at, and then I got home from the combine and we were at work in the city for like a day or two, and then everybody got sent home.
Yeah, no,
And
everything
here we
went.
are right now. I'm still home.
No, yeah, and it's still going strong too. There's absolutely no signs of it letting up. It's crazy times.
I know it's nuts, especially here right now. It's as you and I sit here and record this, tomorrow's New Year's Eve. It feels as bad as it ever has been. So hopefully we get through this, and hopefully everyone's safe and has a happy new year, and then we worry about some off-season football, right?
Yep. So let's get right into it. So all signs point to Gettleman being allowed to step down at the end of the offseason, which why he's given the opportunity to do that based on the fact they've gone 19-44 since he's been at the helm is kind of doesn't make sense for me and the fan base. And plus, right now you're allowed to interview candidates as well. And to go deeper into the dysfunction, Tyler Dunn of Go Long has multiple parts to an article titled "The Autopsy." So I mean, how much does holding on to Gettleman impact their search for a potential GM when other teams have the chance to do so?
It does, right? No matter what, people think of how much power will people have, how much this and that, no matter whatever kind of holdovers you have, it's something that the very smart candidates look at and go, I've heard this about that guy, or I don't want any influence, because it all comes down to how much freedom the owner gives everyone, right? And you never want to come in to do a job and then have other voices in the ear of your boss that blocks you from doing your job. So for the Giants here, it was a questionable hire to begin with. It didn't work out. And I think it's time that they not only move on from Gettleman, but I think it would be their best interest to look outside the organization, find a GM with the head coach pairing, and really allow yourself to tie together the start of a new era for Giants football, right? And I don't think Daniel Jones was terrible. I don't think he's been very good. I don't think he was ever the answer as a top 10 pick. I do think he's going to be given the chance to prove that thought wrong one more year. But and that's okay. I can live with rolling with the quarterback when you have a new GM and preferably a new head coach. But you look at across town what the Jets did, right? They had Darnold and they had Gase, and they brought in Joe Douglas after. And for Joe, it was actually a luxury when he got the 6-year deal that he could see if it would work out with Gase, see if it would work out with Darnold. And when it didn't, he got the chance to really go his own way. He got to hire Robert Saleh. He got to draft Zach Wilson. So if you're looking for the glass half full for the Giants, right? Say they do keep Joe Judge, say they do keep Daniel Jones, and that is owner influenced. That owner also needs to guarantee that new GM that, one, he has full control over personnel, not Joe Judge. And two, if it doesn't work with Joe Judge and Daniel Jones after one more year, he gets full autonomy. He gets full say to do things the way he plans to going forward. Now, that still won't be enough for some guys, but that'll open the door for you to get some good candidates in there.
Mm-hmm. And the Jets model definitely seems like it's something that they could follow. It makes a lot of sense. It's just a matter of will they actually go for a top candidate like outside the organization. Like Joe Douglas was someone that was highly touted like going into that, and he was at first. I wasn't, correct me if I'm wrong. He wasn't completely interested in there until they basically gave him everything he wanted. It's like, okay, like that got his interest and got him to accept the job.
Yeah, it was a long negotiating process, right? He needed the 6-year deal because, and for a first-time GM, for those listening, GMs usually don't get 6 years. They get 4. I believe Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell got hired together on 5-year deals because they're tied together. And things are changing in the NFL. But traditionally, first-time GMs do not get 6 years. They get 4. And, they can get 5. But 6 is a rare territory. And it goes to show you that Joe knew where the Jets franchise stood, that they were far away. That buys you more time. You're not going to get fired in year 2 of a 6-year deal. You can get fired after year 2 of a 4-year deal. It happens all the time. But if a 6-year deal, it really gives you the extra comfort of taking your time, trying to hit on picks of multiple drafts, not a 2-draft fix, which Joe Douglas has given himself 3 drafts. This next draft, he has 4 picks in the top 40. And for the Giants, that's a nice thing about their GM job, is that you have the extra first rounder from Chicago. So you're right. You're absolutely right, Nate, where you look at it and you go, what are the selling points of this job? And we know that it's the 2 first rounders, but what we don't know is are they going to have the option to hire a new coach? Are they going to have the option to go in a different direction at quarterback right away? Because there might be GM candidates that want to come into the Giants and go, I want to use the draft capital and go get Russell Wilson. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying there's guys that don't want to do that. They won't want to go on forward with one more year of Daniel Jones, then have to rely on a new quarterback class that the Giants, say what you want about the Giants, and they're really bad. The Giants are really never bad enough to be picking in the top 3, it feels like, where it's like, okay, they're going to get a top quarterback. They're just they never fall that kind of flat where you have like Jacksonville always does, the Jets have before, the Lions are traditionally always up there. So it's a unique situation, and it comes down to a lot of pros and cons. And like you said, the most important thing is the Giants have not shown as an organization they are willing to go outside of the organization to go get like a Joe Douglas from Philadelphia, go get an Ed Dodds from the Colts, who's the next guy up in my eyes. They haven't shown that they're willing to do that. Maybe this is when they do, but right now it would be a fool's game to assume that.
Yeah, no, it's the fan base would revolt if they went with Kevin Abrams.
And there's a chance that's what they do.
Earth, that would, I mean, hopefully you would think Mara would listen and understand. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. There's just, it's tough times. I'm struggling to find a transition here, but so there were rumors that there's a mandate that Mara's going to basically mandate the next GM to keep Joe Judge and Daniel Jones, which is, I don't think there's so much a problem with keeping them. It's just the owner's like already meddling into a search that hasn't even started yet. So, but Adam Schefter went on Jordan Rennan's Breaking Big Blue podcast saying they'll go with the best candidate rather than doing that. But how much does a mandate impact the search?
Oh man, it totally impacts the search across the board. Whether it, because everybody has views of jobs, right? And a couple of years ago, not even like 10 years ago, like a couple of years ago, the Giants was a highly regarded place to go because the patient owner, the owner was viewed as, very even keeled, mild mannered, not like, 1 year in, rip it up kind of thing. An organization that has won in the past. They have a very, historic, a really valuable history that's still there in that building. Like there are long time family ties within the Giants building, but now you're looking at it, the cap situation is a disaster. I mean, let's call it is, which makes you kind of wonder how Kevin Abrams is considered a favorite to get this job.
Yeah. And you have no cap space.
No, they have no cap space, and they have a ton of money for guys that are just not very impactful compared to where they're paid. My opinion, the Leonard Williams deal is just a wild misfire. Even if he's a good player, he's paid like an elite player. So for a long time. So, the Adoree Jackson swing, things like that. So when you look at mandates, like it comes down to it, there's all kinds, right? You got to keep this guy, you got to make the playoffs by year 2. Guys don't like that kind of stuff because then it forces you to operate in a way that you're not used to, right? And for example, I know I talk about Ed Dodds all the time, but it's a good example because Dodds is a guy that, number one, look at how Seattle has drafted since he left, and that'll tell you everything you need to know. But when him and Ballard got to Indy, they had a lot of work to do. Okay. Like they had a lot of work to do on the roster, and they've had all kinds of curveballs thrown at them since, but they knew that they can hit on multiple drafts to build a sustained winner. No matter what you think of Wentz, like the Wentz move to me is always going to be questionable, but the roster itself actually shows you that they win big games with such little impact from Wentz is a testament to how well they've drafted across the board in many rounds. So, the good ones, and Joe Douglas has not been perfect for the Jets, but Joe Douglas was a good candidate. Everybody knew he was a good candidate. Ed Dodds is a really good candidate. Guys like that, they are viewed that way in scouting circles for a reason because they know how to hit on draft picks and put a cost-effective roster after 3 years of building. And for the Giants right now, they're in an odd place because they've lost for a long time, but they do need to start over. And that's the most frustrating part. And like, and I've seen a lot of this recently, like with the Jets and the Giants are bad. And the Jets, though, you see what they're hitching their wagon to, right? What they're betting on. They're betting on Robert Saleh growing as a coach. They're betting on Zach Wilson developing into at least an average quarterback. And they're playing all rookies this year. They're betting on those guys developing into average starters. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But with the Giants, they kind of built this roster where they thought they were going to win the division this year. You're unsure of Daniel Jones after a couple of years. You're unsure if Joe Judge is ever going to get better at game management. It doesn't look like that's a strength. It looks like a giant weakness where it stinks to say that you have to start over, but it's the smart thing to do. It really is, because the Giants can turn this thing around in 2 years with a good drafter, and you get that money off the books and you implement a system where then you start getting free agents that really fit what you want to do. So they're in such a unique situation because they are a winning franchise, right? Like they have won Super Bowls in our lifetime, where you look at them and you go, this franchise, the fans expect better, as they should. They are obviously, very storied franchise, but they've just made a lot of misfires over the years. And this is the right time to just wipe it clean. New GM, new head coach. Like I said about Jones, you could roll into next year with Jones and give him that extra shot, but you know in the back of your mind, you're not committed to him. And if he fails, you fail. So it's just a really unique situation. And for this owner, for most franchises, like the Jets have gotten this wrong so many times. They would fire a GM, hire the new GM with the old head coach, and that cycle went on and on and on. And that's why they were just a disaster for so long, and they still haven't figured it out. Hopefully, with these guys tied together, they do. The Giants have not shown the ability to go outside and restructure completely, because what they did worked for a really long time. But the sad truth is right now, it's just not working this time around.
No, it's like they went to Jerry Reese, and they won in 2011, but from that point forward, like it just kind of went to a nosedive. The offensive line was horrible. Eli started to decline, and they really had to rely on Odell, and then they kick him out of town, and it's a mess. And
even for Odell, right? Like, who at the time, like the pace he was on, it was like unfathomable for a guy that talented to be traded. But they did get a return for him where they could have, like with Odell, it was like, okay, this stinks. Like this guy was just like so fun to watch. I thought he'd go down as one of the greatest receivers ever. The pace he was on as a Giant, it has not worked out since. But they got a return for him. It's just they just have missed too many picks. And that's a story for everyone. Like everybody always thinks there's like some secret sauce, right? For like why things failed. At the end of the day, you fail because you missed too many picks. And like free agency matters. And the Giants have actually like had some hits in free agency, but it just feels like they haven't gotten the impact from their drafts that they used to. I mean, look at that. All those Super Bowl defensive lines were built. The receivers, even the receivers that like didn't work out for 10 years, but because they got hurt or whatever it was, they were really impactful guys for those teams. So it always comes down to the draft, and Gettleman's drafts have just not been good enough.
No, that trade turned into that. It was Jabril Peppers. They had the 17th pick, which was Dexter Lawrence,
who was a good player.
He's solid, but when you draft him at 17, then you have like a Jeffrey Simmons who he went 19th to the Titans, and he's turned into one of the best defensive tackles in football. And like, I don't think it's an argument that Jeffrey Simmons has been more impactful. And
and you had, DeAndre Baker situation, which like everybody had in teams had the book on him with the character problems, and the Giants took the swing and it didn't work. And it's funny, like Jones seemed like the biggest reach, and like he was a reach, but he actually is, it hasn't been, it's not all on Daniel Jones, right? Like Daniel Jones is not there's like little things to the Giants. Like the Jason Garrett hire was terrible. It was a terrible hire. And, they needed a guy in there that can really develop the quarterback, because you knew Judge wasn't going to be that guy, right? Like Judge likes to control the team, but he's not going to be out there like dialing it up for the offense. So the offensive line ignored for way too long. And Andrew Thomas has been great. I love Andrew Thomas, and I'm really glad to see him.
Not that that's saying much with what they
No,
have.
but I mean, after year one, it was like this, they blew this one. And I'm like, man, I really liked this guy coming out of Georgia. And he's settled in really nicely, but you need more. It's not a one-man show. So, it's a nice piece to have coming into a team, but yeah, they need more.
So with the next GM, what are some of the qualities you believe that they should look for? Obviously, you're going to have 2 top 10 picks, which is huge for turning a team around, but it's also they're kind of in salary cap hell. So what are some of the qualities that you believe the Giants should look for?
Teams always make opposite hires of what they had, right? And with Gettleman, we got our jokes off about analytics and all those things, but they really do need a forward thinker. The game has changed. The rules are different of the game. Analytics aren't everything, but they are something, right? The Giants need to value one. I think they need a coach in there that says, this is what I need to succeed. And I don't really get the feeling of that from Judge. Like, it's always hard to figure out what they want to be. And they need to figure out what their premium positions are. And then they need a guy that is a good drafter, that's a good scout to get there, lay a groundwork, right? Like, the Giants are a team that they're never afraid to spend money. So when that time comes, they're probably 2 years away from that kind of offseason. They got to get all this dead weight off the books. But what you need right now is somebody that can lay the groundwork. Are you trading those 2 picks for Russell Wilson? I don't think so. People think that's a chance that maybe it does. I don't know. But if I'm hiring, I'm saying, who can hit on these picks, get us premium spots? And for the Giants, probably another offensive lineman, honestly. I really love Ojulari. I think they need another pass rusher. I think they need to get back to what they did best, right? In the trenches. That's what the Giants were built on. And this is a good draft to do that. I think when you look at it, they can get, even if it's not an Evan Neal, you can get a Ikam Mekwanu. You can get Charles Cross. There's good tackles. There's, a guy like Linderbaum at center. There's, George Karlaftis, the pass rusher, David Ajabo, the pass rusher. Like, this is a good draft for the Giants to reset and lay that groundwork, build a young team that's tough. And then 2 years when you're ready to compete, you go supplement that with your free agency. So you always need a guy that understands the pro element of the game. But first and foremost, you need a diehard scout. And Mara's do value scouting. Like, there's no denying they value scouting. But I think you need somebody that really is a forward-thinking scout that can navigate the draft better than Dave Gettleman has. Like, why did it take so long for him to start trading? Trading matters in the draft. Like, look at all the great draft picks over the years. They usually went and got the guy. Like, for one, the Saints. The Saints went up and got Alvin Kamara in the 3rd round. Like, people forget things like that. You don't win the draft in the 1st round. You better hit on your 1st round picks. You win the draft on the players that you value in the 3rd round, 4th round, that people don't see them as the talent they are. And you're proactive to go get them. And I think the Giants, it sounds so simple, but they need somebody that thinks like that.
And that was when they drafted Saquon. Like, there was apparently the Broncos wanted to trade up for Sam Darnold, and Gettleman didn't even pick up the phone. And I love Saquon. He's
sure.
You don't take a running back.
It's a bad process.
Problems. Like,
it's a bad process.
It's just,
like, you answered the phone, okay, and then you evaluate it. Like, number one, getting obsessed with players is a dangerous game, and they got obsessed with a player that everybody loves Saquon Barkley, and I want Saquon Barkley to be back to being Saquon Barkley. Like, it's tough to watch. It's a slow return. The Giants don't have a lot of help around them, but it's a bad process. You need to answer the phone and figure out. You probably could have gotten Saquon Barkley still. And even if you were sure you couldn't, you need to understand where your premium positions are and how to work the board and how to navigate up and down. And that's been the biggest failure of this tenure.
Yep. There's nothing else to say then. Yeah, that's about right. So who are the candidates that you believe they should be looking at? Obviously, Ed Dodds he's always like, his name's always swirling around during the offseason, but he's someone that can kind of like a Joe Douglas, pick and choose which job like works best for him. So who are some of the other candidates that you believe they should be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I made it pretty clear they should make a full-on effort to go get Dodds. That would be my 1A, 1B, 1C, whatever you want to call it. If you're looking at, outside the box or at other options, they have, you could look at Okay, they've interviewed Louis Riddick before, right? Do they want to go that outside the box and get a guy on TV? I don't think so, but it's at least you're talking to other people that think differently, right? Like Daniel Jeremiah, in my opinion, could easily step into a GM chair right now. Don't think he's going to do that anytime soon. I would think DJ is happy with where he is right now. Maybe in the future, but like talk to different people. It never hurts talking to different people, and I think the Giants don't do enough of that. Like I would talk to Elliot Wolf, right? A guy that was a long time executive in Green Bay that was a really big name as a young guy and didn't work out there. Everybody thought he was next. It didn't work out there. And he's been a, scouting, consultant for a long time now. I would talk to him and feel him out and be like, okay, like, what do you see with our organization? So you have somebody like Mike Borgonzi in Kansas City, who I think would fit really nicely with the Giants. I wouldn't. The number one, New England will probably block anyone they try to get. I don't want to go get a New England guy and just try to, fix the Joe Judge situation, because then you probably fall down the hole of like, okay, now we're dragging out one of our problems again. So I could sit here and rip off a million executive names. I just think when you look at it, I think they need to be more creative. That's my point, right? Like try to talk to people that are at, winning programs and see what they've done over the years. And there's one more name from Pittsburgh that I want to mention that it's slipping my mind right now, and I'll pull it up. But another team that has drafted really well for a long time, and not just the first round. They've done a really good job. So when you look at it, and Omar Khan and Brandon Hunt are two people that are with Pittsburgh. Now, I don't think a guy like Omar is leaving, but Brandon Hunt, their pro scouting coordinator, he's a big time riser. He's a name that I would keep an eye on for the future. Like those to me are organizations that like the Giants aren't the Giants anymore, where they could just keep hiring the guy that's rising through their ranks. Like just think creatively and go find a guy. And then when you get that guy from outside the organization, you can begin to develop your own guys in-house again. So there's a lot of lists of names. For me, Dodds, Borgonzi, and Hunt are the three that really jump out. And then, like I said, interview people like Wolf. Try to talk to whether it's a DJ or a Riddick. They've talked to Riddick, so I don't know. Like they probably, feel like they know his philosophies and thoughts. But more of that, more of those kinds of moves.
Yeah, I love what you said about just looking at other organizations that are built like the right way. Like you look at the Colts, you look at the Chiefs, like they're contending like every year, and that's due in large part because their ability to draft and sign the right guys. Like the Chiefs had a horrible offensive line at the end of last year and said, all right, well, we're gonna fix this. It's just, and then you have Gettleman's like, oh, we're gonna get the hog mollies, and it's been 4 years and they have maybe one cornerstone offensive lineman, Andrew Thomas. Like it's just been a complete failure.
It has. And you made a great point, Nate. Look at organizations that have successfully solved problems that are similar to yours, right? I bring up Hunt from the Steelers because they know how to draft in the middle rounds. I bring up, and he has the pro scouting side. I bring up a guy like Borgonzi because the Chiefs, they flipped their offensive line. They've even retooled their defensive line. You look at Dodds because he's built it's Seattle, it's Indy, he's built rosters, right? He's just a diehard scout that could hit on day 3 selections. So yeah, you're spot on. You need guys that, in my opinion, probably are in the league right now. I brought up like Jeremiah and Riddick, and I think that's more of just like, it's good to talk to guys outside the league to ask, what are you seeing wrong with us? Because then it gives you a different perspective when you're interviewing your actual candidates inside the league. So I think that I want to see the Giants have a long process. I don't want to see them just say, hey, we interviewed a guy, but we're going to go with Abrams. Like I want to see like a 5-man interview list. I want to see a 6-man interview list. Then I want to see a round 2. And I don't want to see just in-house guys. I want to see the Giants take risks and not be afraid to try something different.
And they have to try something different. Like at this point, it's insanity if you keep on just
You're right.
rolling over. Like Gettleman was a retread. He was a Giant scout for forever before he went to Carolina. And then like before that, it was Jerry Reese. And like Jerry Reese was good, but then obviously there was a point where you could see things were going south quickly, and then they get rid of Coughlin to keep him. Then they hire McAdoo, and it's just, it's been a crap show ever since. Like there's no other way to put it.
No, there's not. And it's not to sit here and just pile on the Giants. Like that's not, it's just calling it. Like I've done this, Nate, you used to listen to Stick to Football, and like covering the draft. Like I've done this with multiple organizations. Like I remember when we started the show, it was the Browns and the Raiders and the Dolphins and of course the Jets. And then, it goes on and on and on. Now it's the Giants' turn. It's the Giants' turn to be, and to credit those teams, they did do something different. Like the Browns went outside the box with their GM hire, and the Raiders hired Mike Mayock, right? Like when you look at the Dolphins, they elevated Greer, and I don't really think it's necessarily worked yet, but they hired Flores from, like, they're at least doing different things where, like, the Giants need to look at those teams that have gone through rebuilds and say, like, okay, like, we need to do something different as well as this league changes.
So obviously we've piled on the Giants a lot, but overall, I mean, this is a very attractive job.
Yeah, no doubt.
Two top 10 picks that you can go in a number of different directions. So, I mean, just as a whole, with other teams that may be looking for new coaches and new GMs, just how attractive is the Giants' job heading into this offseason?
I try to look at it like from two lenses, right? Like my own personal lens where I'm like, okay, what would I like about that job? And then I try to look at it like, what would a guy in the league like about that job? And they're not that much different. I think for me, the difference for me is I'm from New York. So I'd be like, okay, cool. Like, I love staying in the Northeast. And let's not be honest here. Some guys are guys, maybe from the Midwest or somewhere else might be terrified of the New York media, where, other guys, coastal guys might love being in New York, right? Like being, like I live in New Jersey. Like I love being 10 minutes from the city across the water. Like there are destination perks to this. There are the 2 draft picks, like you said. The Giants organization will take care of you, right? Like you're going to be paid well. You're going into a building that is top class. Like, so for me, I would need certain things cleared. I would need the deal that, like, if it doesn't work with Judge, if I had to keep him, I get to hire my own head coach. And the same goes for Daniel Jones. 2, I want autonomy on the draft. I don't want any holdovers or any other voices in the building saying like, oh, we've always done it this way. Like, no, I'm here because we're going to do it my way. And I'm not that kind of guy. Like I would always listen to my scouts, but I'm not going to keep your scouting department. I'm going to hire my own scouting department. I'm going to hire guys that are different, and you got to get used to that. So what I like about the job, the draft capital, I do think it's kind of a nice thing. I think that the Giants are not like, we knew the Texans and the Lions were going to be terrible this year, and give them credit. They've fought a lot harder than I ever thought they would. I look at those 2 teams and thought they could win 1 game, honestly, 2 games. And they've been better than that. They compete, they fight hard, and, they've had bad weeks, but I don't think you're walking into this Giants team and you're just like, okay, I got to watch an embarrassment for a year. Like, I think there's some pieces there, veteran pieces there, that you can go out and win some games your first year, and everyone's kind of is taking it easy on you. They're not looking at your draft class and going, wow, you better be heroes from rounds 1 to 7. So I think that's a perk as well. So it's not a bad job. Like you said, when the money is up on the guys you want to get rid of, you're going to have cash to spend. That means something. Like the Bengals don't have that kind of cash. There's teams that don't spend cash on these monster deals. And that's a perk for the Giants job, is that they care about winning, and they'll spend the money to do so.
They're not afraid to do it either. They did it this past offseason thinking they were close to contending, and obviously they were not. So
yeah.
But yeah, it's just a matter of giving whoever the next GM is, giving them the right amount of power and giving them the right amount of time to build it the right way, rather than just try and just stick it all together and then you have something like this where it's just like, we spent all this money and we're 4-11.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's it's bad awareness, but it happens to people in the NFL all the time, and they got hit with injuries like everyone else. And like I said, the coaching hasn't been good enough. It's that simple to me. Too. So you made a good point. The last thing I'll say on that is that the Giants, they give you time, and when you're a guy getting a new job, a tough job, and a job that requires a lot of work over not just 1 year, but 2 to 3 to turn things over, it's a really nice luxury to have.
So I think this would be the last question I have. Going into what areas do you feel like the Giants should address with they have 2 first-round picks, and they also have 2 third-round picks. They traded back with the Dolphins in the 2nd round to get their, which led to them drafting Ojulari, and then they have the 3rd going into this year. So if you were to like lay out like, all right, this is what we need to adjust in these round 1, 2, and 3, like what players do you feel like they should look at given the depth and like how this draft class is looking?
Yeah, you always want to play the board the right way, of course. But if you're, just getting an early outline, I said trench play on both sides. I think they need another offensive lineman. I think they need another pass rusher across from Ojulari. I think that, like I said, Karlaftis and Ajabo fit that kind of mold. I think that, Ekwonu, Charles Cross, Linderbaum. It's a really good offensive line class. They're going to have their options there. I would keep building the trenches. You look at those third rounders. I love this tight end class. Jeremy Rucker from Long Island, Ohio State guy, great blocker, big red zone pass catcher, guy like that. Sam Laporta, if he declares from Iowa. I don't think they'll take a tight end early enough to get like Trey McBride or Jalen Weidemeyer, but they'll have a lot of options at tight end. And when you look at it, I think they need to get a little more athletic at linebacker. Honestly, I think they could look at a guy like Channing Tindall from Georgia, a really good run and chase backer. So just get more athletic on your defense, get tougher in the trenches, slow build this thing, right? It's like it's the crock pot way. Just let it sit there, take your throw everything in. And it's, you're not going to take out, a 5-star meal necessarily instantly, but you could actually build something and lay a foundation that, say it doesn't work out with Jones. Well, then your quarterback that you're going to take the following year is coming into a situation where you got Andrew Thomas, you got an offensive lineman from the top 10 the year before, you got a defense that, is athletic and can rush the passer. And, the reason they've invested a lot at wide receiver. I don't think they go back down that road this year. You paid Galladay, you got Tony. But I think tight end is a spot they can get a lot better at in terms of run blocking and having a big possession threat. So I think, it's going to be maybe not the sexiest draft for Giants fans, but one they could look back on it. If they do it right, there's going to be pieces there that, don't get all the glamour in the box score, but make a big difference in winning football games.
Yeah. I mean, splashiest isn't always the best. Like that's
rarely ever is.
Like if they could go like O-line with their Evan Neal or Tyler Linderbaum, they can go and then maybe trade back and get like an athletic linebacker or a pass rusher. That would probably go a long way towards, fixing their problems. Their defense isn't that far away, in my opinion. They have pieces there. It's just, the offensive line needs a complete retooling. They need to get the right coordinator, or whether or not I don't mind Freddie Kitchens as an offensive coordinator. Obviously, when you have
Mike, you can do better.
As your quarterbacks, it's I don't think I need to say any more, especially after what happened in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think we've seen enough of that process. I think they could use a backup quarterback that gives them a shot to at least compete.
That'd be huge. Yeah, Marcus Mariota would be good. That was something. Oh, geez, I'm blanking on his name. But that would be a good fit. But they need to. Who knows if they'll even have the money to spend on the backup quarterback like that with all these other issues they have to address.
Yeah, you might be waiting on the market for a guy that's taking the $2 million deal or something like that. But there's cap cuts, there's trades, there's ways they can get out of deals. So we can't speak too soon. But yeah, whoever is coming into that seat has their work cut out for them. I'll say that.
It's like, so there's a lot of work to do, but they're set up to where it can be turned. Like they are set up well to turn this thing around if they get the right guy. Like that's basically my feel. Like, you're gonna have the picks, salary caps. Obviously that's a bit of an issue, but it's something that can be fixed in a couple of years. And odds are you don't want to be spending until you get the right pieces through the draft. Like that should probably be like, let me get the draft right. And then with the money and free agency, then go from there.
Yeah, you need to lay an outline. You need to go, hey, this is what we're going to be year one, and then this is what we're going to be year two. And then by year three, we're firing on all cylinders with the roster, the blueprint that we put together. And the good thing for the Giants is they have an owner that will understand and listen to that. I hope they do. And they're given that time. And that's all you could ask for when you're coming into that GM chair.
Yep. Yeah, I really appreciate this. Like, it was like, who would have ran into you in Miami, and now we're talking about the New York Giants and how to fix them. It's a great opportunity. I really appreciate your time.
Dude, no problem. Thanks for having me. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about after they not only make the hire, but we'll see how this roster turns over and, keep doing great things. I know you've been working really hard, and it was great to run into you down there, and this always fun, man.
Yeah, man. Really appreciate it. Yeah.